Okay, everybody look at the camera and say hi.
Hi.
No, not yet.
Oh, fuck.
So, first up, we watched The White Tiger. The White Tiger is about an impoverished Indian servant who wants what his master has: money, status, and love. Based on the best-selling novel, it stars Adarsh Gaurav and Priyanka Chopra Jonas. It's Netflix's newest release, dropped last Friday, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it had a lot of buzz around it for a while. There was no one's seen it. It had mostly Oscar buzz for Priyanka Chopra Jonas, who, I mean, she's great in it. But does it live up to the hype? Does it live up to the book? I didn't read it. I'm assuming neither of you have read it.
No.
Okay, let's talk about it. What do you think?
So in general, I would say that I felt pretty mixed about it. There was a lot of good, there was a lot of bad. The performances I thought were mostly good. That was probably a lot of the positives for me were the performances. The music was pretty interesting. It had like that Indian flair to it a lot of the time, so that was really cool to have a score like that. A lot of the parts that I felt bad about were a lot to do with creativity and like cinematography in that.
Yeah.
It kind of just felt really normal and kind of plain. I felt like the plot, with it being as, let's say, as ambitious as it deserved a little bit more ambition in the other areas, including the cinematography and the directing. But overall, I felt pretty decent about it.
Yeah. It's from the same guy who directed 99 Homes, which was great, but he also directed Fahrenheit 451, which was fucking terrible. HBO movie.
Yeah, it was really bad.
So I think he is pretty ambitious a lot of the time. I think he was ambitious in that movie. And I don't want to talk about the movie, but like some of his style in that movie I think worked, but I hated the movie as a whole. As far as this movie goes, I didn't hate it and love it. I think, like you said, the performances are great. I think Adarsh Gaurav is great and does more than what he had to work with. I think Priyanka Chopra Jonas is great. But yeah, so I think the worst part about it is that it gets to the inciting incident halfway through the movie.
It's very long-winded.
Yeah, it's way too long.
Very long-winded.
Well, and so in your movie, you're supposed to have your incident or whatever at the beginning that starts everything that comes after it. Well, when that happens halfway through the movie and you spent an hour just building up characters and not really building them up that well, I think it struggles and I think it crumbles under the weight of that. So, I don't know. I just feel super bloated. I also was not a fan of the ending. It gets super meta and self-referential at the ending. I don't think it worked for me at all. I think sometimes it looked crisp and sometimes it looked dirty, and it also looked like a documentary to me at sometimes. Like I just don't think they put enough work into when you see a movie like Let Him Go last year, I know that has nothing to do with this movie, but it has a very vivid sense of place. It knows what it should look like. When you're there, you feel what the characters are feeling. I didn't feel what they were feeling, besides through visual representation of their performances. It's so. I didn't hate it. I think it should have been a lot better.
Definitely very bloated, like you said. Also, he has a lot of shots where it just stays on Balram. What is his name? Adarsh Gaurav. Is that how you say that? He's the main guy, and it's clearly trying to be introspective, but sometimes it does it for way too long, and there's so many of those shots of just him just sitting, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Can we please get to some story here?
I think that's where I actually liked it the most. Was the stuff where it focused on him and it starts getting introspective, and I think that's
not even that. It's not. I don't even necessarily dislike the intro. It just, to me, that's kind of a cheap way to do it. Is just stay on the guy for a really long time, and that's good in a certain way. But to me, he just kept doing that over and over and over and over again, the exact same thing over and over and over and over again.
I know. I think I disagree. I think that was. I think the movie's strongest parts were its performances, and I think focusing on him and what he's going through was its best part. And I think that's
what I'm saying is,
I know what you're saying.
Yeah, it would focus on him doing nothing. He was just sitting there.
I understand but that's not what was going on. He was doing something. He was that idea is like it's trying to get you in his head, like thinking what he's thinking,
I don't know.
and it. I don't know. I think that's where it worked for me the most. Is I think that's where it tried to make a creative decision, and so that I was on board with, especially and like the random things that he would do where he was like took his pants off and sit down next to the homeless person and would, like hysterically laugh, and like you kind of saw that he was kind of losing bits of who he was and like trying to become someone else. I think that's when it worked the most for me.
Yeah, I would agree that I liked those moments a lot. I thought those were some of the better moments, but I do agree that it was way too repetitive. That's kind of what I mean with the cinematography not being very creative and diverse. It's just like what you expect, and then they recycle the same shots multiple times, and it's just not. There's not a lot to work with the shots. It's kind of the same stuff over and over again. But I do agree. I like that about these seeing these characters for extended periods of time, because you got to really see how they were reacting through the performances alone, and how their faces changed and how that affected them, and that really progressed for the main character too, because they would do those shots a bunch of times, but it would develop over time. Like his expression would change in each one of those shots that they did. So I felt like it was kind of like a snapshot of his mental state going through the movie every time they did do it. But they did do it a lot. It was too often.
I bet that did it feel like gimmicky to you? Like they're just relying on the same crutch?
That's exactly what I was trying to get at. Like, it just felt like they weren't like portraying it through the movie, so they would just use the same shot over and over again to make you feel a certain way. And which would be fine if it wasn't 2 hours, and by the end of it you're like, okay, please stop beating me over the head with this, and let's get going with the story.
Yeah. So about the story with that inciting incident, I didn't so much mind how long that took to happen, because it could have been more effective if the story were stronger leading up to that, and it could have been used as a really cool like fake out, like, oh, you think this is what this story is, and then this incident happens, and then it takes it in a completely different direction and turns into a completely different thing. And I think with a stronger first half, it could have, landed that really well, but it didn't, because the first half felt really meandering, and like it was just kind of dragging along until something finally happened. So I like the idea of that. I just don't think it was executed very well.
Yeah, I think the biggest grievance I have with it is that it didn't do justice to its main character, because there's a decision he makes at the end of the film that I think is supposed to. I don't know that they wanted it to be shocking, because like you kind of expect, like we knew what was going to happen. We both talked about it, so you know it's going to happen. But I don't think they built up his character enough to make that decision make sense. It just feels like he's just changed all of a sudden, which he didn't, because you see at the beginning like he doesn't really care about his family that much. Like, so he has all these little character traits that they should have explored more to make the last part make sense to me.
Yeah, they definitely should have.
It just feels like an unearned ending.
Yeah.
Like I said, to me, they had so much time. The movie was so long, and they like fleshed out such weird things in the movie where, like you said, they could have fleshed him out more, and instead they focus on things that you're like, why do I care about this?
Well, I think it would have made those close-ups make more sense.
Yeah.
It feels like they squandered the length of the film,
Yeah, because he like paused it like halfway through it, and I'm like, oh my god, because it just happened. And I'm like, jeez.
And we still had like
an hour and 15
an
minutes.
hour and 15 left.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I did, like, it's on Netflix. It's like free with your subscription. Like, I don't think it's not. Like, you can pause it, so that's great.
Yeah.
You can watch it in bits and pieces.
It's definitely a movie that, and you can do that pretty easily. Like, you don't need to watch it all in one go. You could easily watch it as chunks.
So I do think it is worth the watch, though, and I would say I did enjoy it. I wasn't, like, a huge fan and didn't like it a lot, but I did enjoy it. I thought it was pretty good. And I liked a lot the commentary on, like, the socioeconomic situation in India and the caste system, and how the different like classes of people interact, and what it's like in these different classes. And it even goes into a little bit like detailing the upper castes as we're seeing our like low caste main character experience his life. So I liked that exploration of the situation with the caste system, but I kind of wish it did more with that, because that was probably one of my favorite parts of it is that exploration of how these people live and how that affects them growing up and their aspirations as they become adults and all of that. I think it would have done better with more of that.
I think, and with Balram, or he's like our eyes and ears for the movie.
Yeah.
But I feel like particularly when it talks about like the caste system and stuff, we see how it affects him. But I found like Priyanka Chopra Jonas's character more like just her opinions and stuff like that. I felt like I got more from her than I did from his character.
Yeah, I think that's intentional though.
Yeah.
With her being the American, you
Right.
know.
Yeah,
she very much was providing that perspective of being like what we would have felt in that situation. I think that was definitely intentional to feel that way, and we are supposed to relate to her the most.
You guys have anything else?
I was about to say almost exactly what they said verbatim.
You went to scores?
Yeah,
I gave it a 72.
You gave it a 68.
I gave it a 70.
So our number is 70. So it's on Netflix, dropped last week. Watch it.
It's interesting.
It's good performances, so I mean,
Yeah.
check it out. Bye.